Hello, I'm Sydney Metrick. I'm an expressive arts therapist, and my business is Chicken Soup Counseling. I'm going to talk to you today about loss, grief, and healing. Loss is an integral part of life. You can lose a person, a place, a thing, an idea, or a dream. And if the loss that you experience is one that's profound and difficult, you're going to go through a period of grieving. A lot of people aren't really familiar with what the grief process is like, and because of that, when they're grieving, they think there's something the matter with them. They think they should be over it, or why are you still tripping on that experience? That happened 3 months ago. Well, depending on what it is that you lost and how attached you were to that person, place, thing, dream, or idea, what happens to you is going to be something maybe unlike anything you've ever experienced before or ever want to experience again. Because grief impacts you physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. When you have a physical response to grief, it could be that there's a big feeling of a weight on your shoulders, a burden, or it could be an emptiness, or it could be sick to your stomach that you can't eat. It could be that you're shaking or that you have headaches or stomach aches. There are a lot of physical symptoms that can accompany grief. Emotionally, there's a range of emotions that people experience, from sadness, depression, anger, anxiety, and these things may come at any point in time. There may be a time when you're feeling perfectly all right, and then just like that, you're going to go into a state that's inexplicable and unbelievably powerful. Mentally, people have self-defeating thoughts, they have feelings of hopelessness, railing against the creator if you have a belief in a creator. Mentally, people will feel guilty for not doing or saying something that they felt that they could have done or said differently that would have perhaps prevented the loss. And then finally, spiritually, people may question the meaning of life when they're experiencing a profound loss. So any or all of these things can be part of your grieving process. And grief, in fact, is a process. The process that most people are familiar with is the one that was coined by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She says that there are 5 stages in the grieving process. And the stages are not linear. It's not that there's stage 1, followed by stage 2, followed by stage 3, and so on. The stages occur sometimes. You go into one and then back out, or you'll jump from one to another, and they take place over time. But the first stage is denial. When you hear of something bad happening to somebody else, you go, oh no. The same thing happens when you experience a loss. No, this can't be. Sometimes there's shock there. Sometimes there's just the denial. This can't be happening. You don't want to admit to yourself that it's happened because it's not something that you ever want to experience or want to have to deal with. After the denial stage, or sometimes concurrent with it, is anger. Why is this happening? Why did this have to happen? This never should have happened. Occasionally there's bargaining, especially if it has to do with an illness. You find out that you have an illness and perhaps it was one that was preventable, and you make promises that you'll never do whatever it is again, or that you will do something or other, if only. And when that doesn't seem to make a difference, a person can flip back into the anger stage. So denial, anger, bargaining, and then depression as it starts to sink in and you realize that, yes, it's over. That person will never be in your life again, or never be in your life again the same way. Or that thing is gone. The house burned down. The car was stolen. It's gone. And it's not going to be there. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that's just a bad feeling. Depression. And that could linger for a long time, depending on the strength of your attachment and the other factors that I talked about in the first video on loss. So denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and ultimately acceptance. And acceptance is when you have realized that this is the new condition for your life and you're able to re-engage and reinvest in life. Now, all of this is a rite of passage. A rite of passage is a term that comes from a French anthropologist. And basically what happens in a rite of passage is you say goodbye to something that is gone. There's 3 stages here. The saying goodbye stage, the noticing where you are stage, and then the moving into the future stage. So the saying goodbye stage is like this. Sometimes you leave something behind, and all it really entails is recognizing that that person, place, thing, dream, idea is completed, and you have to acknowledge that and move forward. Sometimes it means what's left. So when someone that you loved or that you cared about deeply, or an animal that you really loved dies, then we have memorial services. Then we have photographs to look at, because we want to remember. We want to see that maybe that person is gone, but who we are as a result of our relationship with that person remains. So in the letting go stage, we're also holding on to something that's really ours, that can never be taken from us. And then when you're in that middle ground, when you're on that bridge, you're kind of looking at, well, who am I now without this person, place, or thing? And what does that mean for me in the future as I go towards the future? So you're kind of getting a sense of balance, getting a sense of self. And once you have that self, you can make that next step out into the future, knowing that you've grown from the experience in some ways, although painful it may have been. And that when you get to the other side, it's going to be one where you were able to create a new sense of yourself based on everything that you've experienced, based on everything that you've had, based on everything that remains. So the grief process is, as I said, a process. And while you're grieving, there are certain times that grieving is going to be more difficult and times when it's going to be easier. There are times that you're going to forget and you'll feel fine. And then there are things that may come up, especially during the first year, that will remind you of your loss. And at those times, you may go through the anger again, or the denial again. And sometimes, even after years have passed, there will be something that just brings up that memory. And at those times, you may re-experience some of those feelings, and that's normal. What's important is at those times that you have ways to deal with your feelings that are healthy rather than harmful. And those are things that you can find support for. That's one of the things that I do as a therapist, and that's what many therapists do. And you can also find more information on my website. I'm Sydney Metrick, Chicken Soup Counseling, www.chickensoupcounseling.com. Thank you for listening.